It remains one of the most unlikely racing cars ever conceived, but over 3 generations of design, it became one of Super GT's most iconic cars. This is the story of the final, for now at least, APR Toyota Prius GT300. After 7 seasons of racing, the IndyCar V8-powered Toyota Prius GT300 had finally been banned at the end of the 2018 season. Its mid-engined layout was no longer legal in Super GT, and parts for its wild but outdated 3.4-litre normally aspirated engine were no longer available. It was surely the end for the Toyota Prius GT racing story, and if you've not yet watched the other videos covering the first 2 iterations of this car, then the links appearing above should take you to them, or select the playlist to watch them all in order. Ahead of the 2019 Super GT season, there were a lot of wild rumours about the APR racing team, as the Prius had been banned. Everybody wanted to know what its boss and chief designer Hiroto Kaneso would do with the team that year. It was expected, indeed it was pretty much certain, that they would compete in the GT300 category of Super GT, and it was equally assured that the team would race with a Toyota-based car, but there wasn't much clarity on exactly what model would be used. Some people still insisted that the car would actually be a hydrogen fuel cell Toyota Mirai racing car. After all, Toyota had quietly been using the Mirai for some low-key motorsport events around the world at that point. So when the APR racing team arrived at the 2019 Tokyo Auto Salon, there was great excitement for what was underneath that cloth. And when it was pulled back, it was another Prius. Yep, APR would again be going racing in Super GT with a Toyota Prius. But this Prius was quite different to the cars which had raced in the series from 2012 to 2018. Most obviously, it was a front-engined car. Super GT has 2 classes of racing. GT500, which at that time was exclusively for manufacturer-backed team racing cars built to the joint DTM Super GT Class 1 Plus Alpha regulations, and the second category of Super GT is GT300, the 300 then meaning 300 brake horsepower, and you guessed it, the cars have a lot more power than that in that class, and it's this category that the Prius was being built for. In GT300, it used to be possible to build a mid-engined car based on a front-engined production car, but that practice was outlawed ahead of the 2016 season, but the APR team exploited a little loophole in the regulations to allow it to keep racing the mid-engined Toyota Prius all the way up to the end of the 2018 season, but for 2019 that practice was firmly banned. The GT300 rules allow teams to race 3 different types of car, each with its own set of regulations. FIA GT3 cars, which everybody pretty much knows about, the GT300 mother chassis cars, and there's a video on that on this channel, and the JAF GT300 cars. The Prius was built to the last of these rule sets. In JAF GT300, the rules are pretty simple. The car must be based on a production car available in Japan, and they must utilise an engine manufactured by the same company that made the base production car. So a Toyota or a Lexus has to use an engine manufactured by Toyota, and that's pretty much the only restriction on the engine choice. In the past, the 2 previous Prius GT300 cars had utilised an engine based on the Toyota IndyCar V8, the RV8K and the RV8. It's the same engine Toyota had raced in Formula Nippon, Super Formula and at Le Mans in LMP1. But as Toyota had stopped making this engine, parts for it had become scarcer and scarcer, and in fact it had become either impossible to source parts for the engine or prohibitively expensive to acquire those parts. It was clear a new engine was needed, and there were some options, including the 2019 GT500 specification 2-litre 4-cylinder engine, or the similar commercially available TRD Biz 001 engine, or even a production-based engine. Even the Toyota H8909 V6 engine used in LMP1 was contemplated for use in the new Prius. TRD and Kaneso, though, opted eventually to use the same production-based V8 engine used in the Lexus RCF GT3 car, the Toyota 2URG. It was a 5.4-litre normally aspirated V8 engine, but the version fitted to the Prius was quite different to the version on the GT3 car. Exactly what was different about it wasn't actually revealed by the the team. In fact, they were very, very cagey about it. But it was clear that the intake system was quite different, and there were some internal differences, but TRD didn't even tell Kaneso or APR what those differences actually were. Notably, the Prius would have to run on twin 34.5mm air restrictors compared to the twin 38mm air restrictors on the GT3 car. The crucial difference about the new Prius compared to the old APR GT300 designs was where the engine was mounted. As the new GT300 car was based on the Prius PHV GR Sport variant of the XW50 Prius, the engine had to be mounted at the front of the car, as this is where it was located on the production car. This would mean a major change for Kaneso and for APR, which had been evolving its mid-engined GT3 car concept for almost 2 decades, starting with the Toyota MRS, which raced in the old JGTC series. The learnings of that car just carried over through a series of designs right up to the Axio Corolla and into the first and second generations of Prius GT300. The new front-engine car retained less than 10% of the 2018 specification mid-engined Prius, which is actually more than it used from the standard production car. The JAF GT300 rules do require the cars to use some of the production car in the race car version. About half of the roof, the front bulkhead, much of the floor and the A-pillar remained on the Prius from the base model car, albeit all in modified form, along with the headlights, the tail lights and the badges. The rest of the car was a bespoke race car, mostly a tubular steel chassis. When the car first took to the track for testing, it utilised a mixed body package. The front end of the car was fitted actually with bodywork from the second generation GT300 Prius. You can see that here at one of the first pre-season tests alongside the second Prius, which is fitted with the full 2019 bodywork package. Actually, that old spec front bodywork had been heavily modified and covered in a dazzle ship livery to try and hide the fact that it was actually a front-engined car, though the exhaust pipes were a little bit of a giveaway on that one. Like the previous generation Prius, it was a Prius after all, the 2019 car was also a hybrid, and it used standard production parts from various Toyota models, not just the Prius, and it didn't use a bespoke motorsport hybrid system as used previously by the Honda CRZ GT300. On the 2019 Prius, the arrangement was similar to the old car, with a capacitor-based energy storage medium and a single production car derived motor. The motor and the power control unit came from the Lexus 350h. The energy store, on the other hand, was an experimental part from Toyota aimed at use at some future production car which hadn't actually been unveiled at that point. The energy store and PCU were mounted in the passenger seat area of the car, which is on the left-hand side of the car, as this is Japan and they do things correctly, while the motor was mounted at the rear of the car on a specially adapted Hewland 6-speed sequential transmission driving the rear wheels. Here you can see an older version of that installation in one of the earlier cars. However, only one of the two APR Priuses, or is it Prii, was equipped with a hybrid system, the red number 31 car, while the yellow number 30 car ran with its V8 power alone. The reason for this split was to allow the team to understand the difference in performance between having the hybrid system on the car and having a non-hybrid powertrain. The feeling the team had was that the energy store was actually a bit too heavy for the car. Indeed, weight was a big issue for the new Prius. In addition to the weight of the hybrid system, as a hybrid running in the GT300 class, it was hit with an additional 51 kilos of weight handicapping, and even using its bespoke Bridgestone tyres, it was still initially slower than the non-hybrid car running on the custom specification Yokohama's. Super GT is a tyre war championship, and tyre manufacturers will develop tyres for some specific cars competing in the series, such as Bridgestone with the Prius, but the other Prius was running on the same Yokohamas that anybody could buy off the shelf. Note that both of the front-engine Priuses, Prii, whatever, were heavier than the previous generation of car, and around Fuji Speedway they were actually initially slower than the previous generation of car had been around the same track. Much of this drop in performance was down to the increased weight of the car, and that wasn't all down to the hybrid system. The 2018 Prius had a minimum weight of 1,150 kilograms, with the 51 kilogram hybrid penalty applied on top of that, but the 2019 front-engined car tipped the scales at 1,250 kilos even before the hybrid penalty was applied. One big reason for the weight increase of the car was actually the engine, as it was based on a production car design, and it alone weighed more than 100 kilograms, while the old RV8K engine was much lighter as it was designed to be raced in an IndyCar. The heavy front-mounted engine totally changed the weight distribution of the car as well. The mid-engine car had a 46% front and 54% rear weight distribution, but the new car was the exact opposite, with a 54% front distribution. This shift in the weight distribution meant that Canaiso had to come up with a completely new suspension layout for the car, which did still remain a conventional double wishbone design with push rods front and rear and inboard mounted spring and damper units. However, the front suspension in particular was a major challenge because, well, it didn't really fit. Well, it wasn't actually the suspension which really didn't fit into the car, but the 5.4 litre V8 engine. It was just too big for the outline of the Prius bodywork. In fact, the sheer width of the engine meant that there simply wasn't any space to lay out the front suspension as Canaiso really wanted to, so the dampers had to be mounted right next to the engine. A bit of help from GT500's Team Le Mans and the use of their 7-post rig in Gotemba allowed Canaiso to fine-tune the layout of the car a little bit, but I do wonder, was there any thermal effect on the damper from the engine getting hot during a long race? The engine was an issue with the car's aerodynamic package as well. It was very hard to package it under the Prius PHV bodywork, and that tight front end meant that the cockpit temperatures increased to the level where the drivers were constantly complaining about the heat coming into the cabin. However, despite that, the cooling system layout of the car overall was actually a bit easier than on the old car. The main engine water and oil coolers were mounted in the nose of the car along with the hybrid system coolers. At the rear of the car there was a transmission cooler and an air conditioner mounted to try to keep the drivers from complaining anymore. The cooling system layout was aided, as was the wider aero package, by TRD, arranging for APR to have the new car built at 25% scale for wind tunnel testing, which resulted in a few changes to the rear bodywork concept. Prior to this, APR had only been able to do full-scale testing with its cars. Note the aerodynamic elements on the side of the car. There's some real GT500 influence there, and I wonder if TRD had made some suggestions. This final GT300 Prius was not a great success when it started racing. In fact, all of the APR Prius GT300 designs, this one was the least competitive. In 2019, the two cars failed to score a single point, and in 2020's disrupted season, there were only 3 points finishes from the cars, and the best of the two cars ended up in 18th in the championship. 2021 was another pointless season, aside from a single race win that came at Autopolis. The form didn't improve in 2022, and only one Prius was entered into the series, and it again failed to score any points. It was the last season for the front engine car and the last season for the Prius in Super GT. So what went wrong with that final front engine Prius? Well, its weight was an issue that never really got resolved, but the balance of performance process never really favoured the Prius either. Apart from that one race win at Autopolis, it was never really a competitive car. Meanwhile, APR had built a completely new car based on the Toyota GR86, but it didn't give up on the Prius, and Canaiso was actually working on a brand new APR Prius, a fourth iteration of the car, based on the forthcoming XW60 Prius model, and he was planning to race that in 2023. But then that production car's introduction was delayed, he had to rethink the project, and it was essentially abandoned. The work on that Prius, though, was redirected into another new car from APR, and it was another new hybrid car, and it was based on the Lexus LC500H. So in 2023, for the first time since the 2012 season, there would be no Prius racing in Super GT. But a new Toyota Prius is expected at some point in the not too distant future, the XW70, and perhaps Canaiso is already thinking about what he could do with it. Let's hope that he is. Indeed, the XW60 is still in production, and it too could be a great GT300 car, particularly with its aerodynamic profile. I do wonder if we might see APR doing something interesting with that design in the not too distant future as well. If you've enjoyed this hybrid tale from Japan, then there's many more like it to come, so don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon, somewhere in the pit lane.